I work in an agency as a senior creative designer and I'm fortunate enough to have a leadership role. However, I find my leadership role has isolated me from forming genuine relationships in the workplace, not for lack of trying. Am I delusional for thinking I should be able to make friends at work, or should I just accept that because of my role, friendships are not available to me in the workplace?
hmm So there's a lot in this question, and so my apologies ahead of time is that my response is likely to be a little bit longer and multifaceted because there's a lot of things there. Firstly, this is a really great question, and I think it's absolutely wonderful that you're thinking about and wanting to build more connected relationships. This is truly a sign of your values and attributes as a leader, and I think that is fantastic because it's not something or it's not an area that all leaders think about. And, we spend the majority of our waking hours at work. So, building a community through strengthened relationships can actually be a protective factor for stress. So, I'm super impressed that you're actually thinking about how important it is. And I don't actually think that it's unreasonable for us to develop friendships just because we're in a leadership position. But those friendships might look a little bit different to what we experience in our social network outside of work. And so reframing that as a first step can be helpful. It's a little bit like, high school, where we get lumped in with a group of people and we have no choice about that. So when it comes to work, we are surrounded by people that we didn't actually choose necessarily to be around. So with that analogy in mind is that, there might likely only be a few people that we gel with or a few like-minded individuals that we can form a connection with, and that's completely okay because any relationship, whether great or small, is super important and meaningful. So that mindset reframe about like what friendship looks like in the workplace can be helpful. Some other thoughts that have come to mind is that, the foundations to building really good relationships involve trust, respect, and rapport. So, thinking of different ways to build this can be a helpful avenue. And we often build relationships through identifying common ground and interests. So, getting to know the people around you and understanding what is important to them, what is going on in their lives. So, for example, their families, their hobbies, their sports interests, even if there's something significant happening in their life, maybe they're getting married, maybe they just bought a dog, maybe they're building a house, maybe they've had their first child, their second child, or their third child, getting to know people. And the way that we do that is through asking good questions, showing your curiosity and being present when they are talking with you. So, using active listening without going into detail about that, that does involve, reflecting back to them, what you heard so that they know that you are trying to understand what they're trying to share with you. And then also following up with these people who have shared information with you, so that you can kind of show them that you're genuinely interested in what they actually said, that you care about them, and that you remembered them. Sharing from your end is also super important, and this can be a hard thing for someone in a leadership position to do. It can take a little bit of courage and the willingness to be vulnerable. What are your interests? What's the human side to you? So that can be an area that is not going to feel super comfortable, but when you get used to kind of showing that side to you, this can definitely lead to a much more connected interaction when you do have them. Some other thoughts are, looking for moments of connection. So this also involves, a mindset reframe. Is that sometimes when we believe that, you know, there's not going to be a positive outcome because of a certain situation, we can subconsciously show this in our behavior. So we might actually have some walls up that people can sense. So it's important to acknowledge that if that is indeed the case. And this can also involve, you know, looking for moments of connection instead of just focusing on, you know, displays of disconnection or a perception of disconnection. And the other thing that I think about is also just looking at avenues for relationship building outside of work. So, like social events or family days. This allows the opportunity for the people around you to see the other sides of you that don't just relate to you being a leader, you know, the part of them that is with them, so part of the team, the part of you that is the fun side of you, so you know that can engage in enjoyment and laughs and crack jokes. Having these types of activities can also give you an opportunity to then follow up with people afterwards and have something, you know, common to talk about.
Yeah, brilliant. This is, I mean, this is such a great question because Nick and I were also discussing beforehand how we've probably been in this situation where it feels like, oh, now you're in leadership and people sort of take a step back. Nick, have you anything to add here, or just like it's feelings that you've also experienced?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's something that is very complicated, and yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to have some awesome friends through the last 12 years of growing the business, even though I was technically their boss. But it does create a additional complicated layer within the business as well, because you don't want other people to feel that you are particularly good friends with one over another, and it creates interesting dynamics within the business. So it's really complicated and really hard. I don't think it means that you cannot make friendships within a business. I think you can. I think there's just a different spectrum of what that friendship looks like. Because I think I'm, you know, I love making meaningful relationships with all of my colleagues, but am I going to be that intimate friend that they share certain things with? Probably never going to happen. So yeah, it's a really complicated issue, but I think it's just about framing what type of friendship you can have with that person, and maybe understanding where some of those lines are that potentially cannot be crossed, because it might later on down the track, when you have to have some kind of performance management conversation or something like that, it just makes it a lot more complicated.
I think there's some really good tips in there as well of how it's almost like you have to try even harder and you have to share even more at that level to be able to kind of, for people to understand you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it was nice to hear kind of, you know, to build that meaningful connection, you have to put, you know, if anything, more effort in to be able to kind of create those friendships. So yeah,
which I think is also really valuable, because then people also empathize with where you are in your world. You're not some kind of isolated leader or boss. You know, you are a human being as well, with lots of things going on in your life. So I think it can be a real strength as well.
Yeah, brilliant.